And then we'll kick off
This
here.
meeting is being recorded.
There, did you hear that? I am recording. Awesome. So good morning. We're in week 7 with interpersonal communication, and I'm always just amazed once we get past assignment 3, how fast the rest of the assignment goes. And the class in general goes. So I hope that you've had a good time and that you're enjoying yourself and that you're finding nuggets of information in here that are useful to you in your professional and your personal life. This morning, I'm going to start out by just reviewing what's expected in assignment number 5, which is the interview assignment. Some of you have already turned that in, which is awesome. If you need more points, you can always resubmit for mastery. And otherwise, we'll move into the interview assignment. So let me just share my screen. New York. Yes, it's later in New York for sure. I'm also going to talk about the reflection assignment just briefly. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is an interview assignment, and the overarching idea behind this assignment is to help you see how our personal communication, like with your family, is different than our workplace communication and the ways in which it's similar, and hopefully just give you insight into different leadership styles, the way that we use technology, how we create cohesion. The idea is that you'll interview 2 different people, one person from a family and one person from a workplace. Now, we all have different scenarios in our life. So if interviewing 2 people is difficult for you, or you're not currently working in a workplace right now that you could do an interview, you can do the same person. If they're a working person, they're working in a work environment, whether it's virtual or in person, just ask them about their family and then ask them about their work life, just to kind of make that less. It is most ideal to do 2 different people, so you get 2 different personalities, 2 different histories, 2 different. Oh, thank you. I just got flowers, you all. So nice. Thank you. Thank you. Said romance is dead. It's not. Okay. Pulling it back together. So the assignment is pretty explanatory as far as and it's not recorded. You don't have to do an audio recording. You just ask the questions and write down the answers. If you're interviewee and you ask them a question and they're like, a 1-word answer, try to dig a little deeper so you have more to go on when you do your analysis. Like, why? What makes you say that? So the real meat of the assignment happens, excuse my scrolling. I know it can get a little bit, dizzy-like. So question 21 through like 26 maybe is where you're comparing and contrasting the responses on specific concepts like cohesion. So just like you've been doing throughout this whole course, make sure you clearly define for your reader, me, and for yourself, what is cohesion? What is your working definition? And then compare and contrast what you saw with your family interview and with the workplace interview. Then the real meat, my favorite part of the assignment is question 26, the very last part, where this is where it's like show off time. You get to show off what you have learned in interpersonal communication by offering advice. Like, here's what I've learned, and here's what I think would help improve this person's interpersonal communication. Remember to keep in mind, we're not trying to be hypercritical. We're trying to be constructive and just sharing our knowledge. If your interviewer or interviewee has done everything really well and you're like, I got nothing, use the 300 words to offer encouragement in each of these concepts. Remember, I still have to see that you understand the concepts. Okay. Any questions about that part of it?
No.
No? Okay. So let me just bump over then to the reflection assignment. And this one is a short video. So remember, you are not having to take a public speaking class. So just remember that you did not have to spend 8 weeks doing public speaking. So this is my one opportunity, especially considering we're talking about interview skills, to get you in front of a camera, to give you some practice speaking. I'll be your only audience member if it stresses you out. You just need to answer these 3 questions. Make sure that you dress appropriately. Take an opportunity to maybe not be in pajamas, which believe me, I've had people submit interviews with curlers in their hair. And I'm like, that's not appropriate. Let's be professional, right? Because we are professional adults looking to work and use our degrees. So make sure you show up for this. And then it's just short, like less than 3 minutes would be awesome. So do you have any questions about the reflection assignment? It is due on Thursday, but if you want to turn it in early, that is fine by me, because I have to post your final grades on Friday. And especially for your benefit, if you turn it in early, like on Tuesday or Wednesday, and I can get it graded, then you have a complete picture of what your grade will look like heading into Friday. So if you want to make any adjustments, you'll be able to do that. Okay. Okay, awesome. All right, so when I say the word interviewing, what does that do to you? Does it excite you? Does it make you nervous, stressed out? What do you think?
Stressful.
Stressful. Nervous.
Yeah. Why is that, do you think?
I don't know.
For me, it's because you're never sure what they're going to ask or what they're looking for.
Yeah, and you make yourself really vulnerable in that moment when you're interviewing for something, because like you are the one who's sort of on the witness stand and they're asking you questions. But throughout the course of our time, I'm going to help prepare you with things you can put together ahead of time, and also help you understand that just as much as they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them. Because remember, they have a position open and they need someone to fill it. And it might be you. You might be that person. So there's this interesting interplay that happens. What I want to do first is show you this video of what not to do when interviewing. And we're going to use that to bounce our ideas back and forth. Can everyone hear it?
I don't hear anything.
Hang on. I will fix that. Okay, rewind. And push play. John?
Sorry, I'm late. Are you Susan? I'm here for the job interview.
Hi, I'm Susan Thompson, Resource Manager. You're 10 minutes late.
The traffic was terrible.
Have a seat. You John Hill? Okay, tell me about yourself.
My main hobbies are watching classical movies, riding my motorcycle, and I have 2 granddaughters. They're so cute. Let me show you.
Oh, that's okay. I'll take your word for it. Do you have a resume?
I turned it in with my application.
Okay. All right, it says here...
Look, I found them. Aren't they adorable? And wait, there's my dog. Isn't that cute?
Very cute. It says here that you only had your last job for a couple of months. Can you tell me why it was so short?
You know, I hated that place. My supervisor was such a jerk. All he did was complain about my work.
Oh, what was the problem?
Oh, they had all these rules. I followed the most important ones the best I could, but he would get mad if I didn't follow all the rules all the time. Ugh.
I see. Well, can you tell me why you want to work here?
Oh, yeah, somebody told me you guys have a really good dental policy. I've got trouble with this tooth right here. It needs a lot of work.
Okay, I think I've heard enough. Do you have any questions for me?
You know, what does this place do?
Well, we have a restaurant and we make frozen desserts that are shipped all across the country.
Cool.
Well, it's been nice meeting you.
Well, now when will I know if I get the job?
We'll make phone calls tomorrow.
Okay, see you later.
See ya.
And that's the end of that. What do you think?
Terrible.
It was
No way
horrible.
he's getting that job.
I'm still laughing. Funny.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work out for him so well.
What's shocking is how many people actually do that,
Mm.
like in the
People
real world.
actually do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. And then they wonder why they can't get a job. So it's really, really unfortunate. So sorry I'm late. The title of the video kind of just tips it off with what we're
Mhm.
getting into when we watch that video. So let's just talk about the opening process, first of all, of even just selecting an employer. So you know that you have a need and you know that you need a job. It's really good before you even apply to sit down and take stock of who you are, what your goals are, what you know and what you don't know, and think about the bigger things. Do I prefer to work in a smaller work environment? Do I want to work for a large company that has multiple locations? Do I care about the politics of the company? Do I want it to be close to home or far away from home? And some of those things can seem like a little spoiled, but honestly, if you are just, especially coming straight out of school, if you have the luxury of just sitting for a second and figuring out what's going to suit you best, and it's really going to help you in the long run, because it's going to help ensure that you have a proper fit with the employer and that you're actually going to like a job. Now, if we are in a position where we need cash, like now, we may not have those luxuries, but once you get more stable and say that place you end up at is not for you, then you have the freedom to sit down and do that. Make sure you research the position. I find that a lot of job ads are so broad, like they want the absolute perfect person, and that's just not realistic. So try to understand exactly what they're looking for. Ways that you can figure that out are by, first of all, just pulling the job ad and then pull a couple other ads from the company if there are, and see where there's similarities and differences between what they're looking for. So, because like sometimes they'll post just like really broad things where it looks like they kind of just copied and pasted for each of these positions and then tweaked a few small words. If you can kind of figure that out, it can give you a better feel for what they're exactly looking for with the position that they want for you. And then that researching the whole employer thing goes back to look at their websites. If it's the kind of employer that might have Google reviews or Yelp reviews, make sure you're looking at that. If you know anyone who has any contact and has worked with the employer or knows anything about the company, just ask some questions so you can get a general feel for what you're looking into. Some people don't know this, but I actually took a short break with Brian over the summer to work at a different place, because long story short, Brian couldn't hire full-time faculty in Colorado, and I was working for multiple universities basically, which was essentially a full-time job. And I really needed to be at just one place because I was going crazy. So I took a job at another place. But in the process of doing that, I made phone calls to people I knew who had had interaction with them, and tried to get a real feel for the industry and for the business and what they might be looking for, and then try to set myself up for success to get the job. Now, thank goodness, it was a fine job. It was a decent fit for my skill set, not for my family. And then Brian said, "Oh, we figured it out. We can hire in Colorado." And I was like, "Yes, take me back now." And so they did. I'm just so pleased to be here in a full-time capacity. But those sorts of things go a really long way. When you do the interview, I think it's important to know that there's a lot of different types of interviews, and sometimes these things really blend. And I'm sure you all have been interviewed before. Do you recall what the interview felt like when you went to it? Did you know what kind of interview you were walking into?
I don't know that you can necessarily know what type of interview you're walking into, but you can definitely know what type of company it is.
Okay. And how did you go about figuring out the type of company?
Research, I like to know exactly, what people think of that company, what that company provides, what what kind of leadership they have within the company, what kind of resolutions to problems that come up are really, what kind of safety or security, depending on what it is.
That's awesome. You bring up a great point about some questions to ask the employer during the interview. So we're going to circle back to that for sure.
At my work, we have over 30 salons. And so when they interview, of course, it's like, it's hair. So everybody wants to know your technical skills, but they also look at your behavioral, because each store has a different kind of vibe, I guess. And so they actually place you in which store fits your personality that's closer to your home. So like you're there, and then they may not put you in one store because you don't fit, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. That is super interesting. That the company even has an awareness that there's kind of a different cultural thing going on at each salon. That's
they
cool.
want to keep the staff when they hire them, and they know if they put them in the wrong salon, that if they don't speak up or whatever, then they'll just leave the company. So it's important to like find their place before they put them somewhere, because they want to retain them and not lose them.
So good. And that goes back to the very beginning of our class where we talked about Schutz's theory of inclusion, control, and affection. I would bet my career on that theory, because if you can help people feel included, feel like they belong, if you can give them a sense of agency, like they matter and they have some power and they have some, some say so. And then if they feel that sort of warmth in the environment, it will go really, really well for that organization. Now, when you start to lose, when control like kind of goes away for the cohort, and you feel like you have no agency and it's not a warm environment, and you don't belong, it's not going to work out so good. That's awesome, Megan. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, so out of all the interview types, I kind of narrowed it down to 3. It usually kind of goes 1, 2, 3 behavioral. So we're going to bring you in. We're just going to see what you're like. We're going to ask you some questions and kind of get a feel for who you are. Technical interview is, okay, we like you. Let's see if you actually know what you're doing. And if you're like going into health information systems, maybe it's some sort of coding or insurance. Maybe you got to fill out a tax form. Maybe if you're in fitness, you have to go actually train like one of their employees or do a class for them. Paralegal, that's one I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you have to interact with a client or say what you would do in particular scenarios. So technical, can you actually do the stuff? Which we've talked about largely, people can do the stuff. It's the behavioral and the social interview where people fail, which is what our guy did. Like he probably could do the job just fine, but his behavioral skills versus showing up late, And then his ability, the social interview is more like the third interview where you're no longer just meeting with one-on-one or like with like two people. Now we're going to get you together in a large group setting, and we're going to see if you play nice with others. Can you have camaraderie? Do you fit in? So those are kind of like the three types, and they will mix and match. But when you're interview, and depending on the questions they'll ask, like, oh, we've made it to this stage. Like, yes, I can play nice. I'm a nice person, right? Okay. So before the interview, some things you can do after you've researched the employer, you need to prepare show and tell stories. So you know what they're looking for. You can get an idea of the specific things. What are the things that have happened to you already, whether in a class or in a working situation where things went really, really well and you persevered, or things didn't go so well and you've learned about it. So try to come up with like 3 to 5 scenarios that are fresh in your brain that you can refer to. So when they ask you a question, you're going to repeat that question just like you do in all of our assignments. I'm so glad that you asked me about this because I went through this. Here's what happened, and here's what I learned from it. Here was the outcome, and I can repeat that or I can modify it. So 3 to 5 show and tell stories. Make sure that you're addressing the part. With your research on the employer and the organization, you should know what the dress code is. And I would recommend dressing like a step above. Like, you don't want to show up all fancy and out of place, but you do want to be put together, and you'll feel better when you're put together. And it is the same thing for a digital interview. So if you're going to do an interview and like we are right now, I could have pajama pants on. You have no idea, right? But I don't. I'm fully clothed. I do have slippers on. I don't have shoes on.
So you say.
Okay. But you just feel better. You feel put together. You're like ready to go. So whatever it is that helps you feel ready, be ready, dress the part. What did this guy do? How did he dress?
He just rolled out of bed and threw a jacket on.
Right?
Well, like
Yeah.
he's going to a social club, some social event.
Right. He's going to hit happy hour afterwards.
Yeah.
Except that tooth. I don't know if that tooth can tolerate happy hour. Yeah.
I
So,
would never, ever consider employing anyone who showed up late. I just wouldn't.
okay. And what does that say about a person when they show up late to you, Cecilia?
And so, I mean, if you're late to the interview, you're going to be late to work. You're irresponsible. And you know what? You don't need that in a job position.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I agree, which is why, great segue. I think you need to show up 30 minutes early to the interview. It will help you avoid any traffic snags that might come up. It will also give you time in the parking lot to collect yourself. So, because you don't want to be rushing into an interview that might give you your livelihood for the next decade. You want to be calm and collected. Now, let's say that something happens that is outside of your control, and there is like an accident right in front of you, and you're stuck. You can't move. What do you do?
Call.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't always control everything, but you can certainly call.
Yes.
I mean, everybody has a cell phone now. I mean, it's not that hard.
I agree. Yeah. Try to communicate with them in every way possible. Give a phone call, send an email, send a text if you have one, just that you're hitting all of your bases. If for some reason you call and you can't get through or you get voicemail.
Mhm.
So make sure you let them know. And then it's good to walk into the interview space 10 minutes early, especially if it's an office environment. The receptionist knows everything. And the receptionist is the front line for all the people, and their opinion is going to be asked by the people who are hiring, hopefully, because they just interface with everybody, just like Dominic in our fake case study. They just know it all. So go in early, make nice with the receptionist, gives you time to use the restroom if you need to, and then you're there and you're ready to go. So we talked a little bit about video and digital, just a few tips there. If you have to do a telephone interview, make sure that everything is quiet. Make sure that your connection is secure, and make sure there's not going to be any other distractions going on around you. You could even test your telephone ahead of time. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm on the phone, I feel more comfortable when it's like beside my ear, because I feel like there's not going to be any extraneous noise in being able to talk to them. But it also doesn't free me up to use natural gestures and head movements the way I would if we were face to face. So that's where sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe the speakerphone is better, because then I can talk and I can use my natural body language, because that comes through in the nonverbal paralanguage of what's happening in the tone of your voice. So just make sure you're testing it, whatever scenario, so that you are nice and clear. For video and digital, one of my pet peeves is the backgrounds, that even like right now, I think I've got, no, I don't know if my video is blurred. Yeah, my background is blurred. So when I move my hand in some direction, my hands go away. And like palm trees and stuff are nice, but they're so distracting. So a better course of action is to get a blank wall behind you, so that nothing gets lost as you're speaking, and also make sure you're looking directly at the camera. So like right now, you all are all over here. So you see how my face is turned?
Mhm.
So it doesn't actually look like I'm looking at you. You know, it feels uncomfortable, and you can practice this in your reflection assignment. It feels uncomfortable to look directly at the camera and not like look down at your screen, but I'm looking at my camera now. So does it look like I'm actually looking at you?
Yes.
Good. So now it feels like we're connecting. That's why the whole video, the digital world is kind of a farce. We talk about, remember that you are interacting through a medium to actually talk to the person, because I can't actually make eye contact with you this way, but yet you feel like I'm looking at you, and vice versa. So that's really important. Now, first impressions, that happens in 7 seconds. So if you're late to the interview, your first impression is already gone. Those 7 seconds have been formed. So when you show up and you meet someone for the very first time, remember they're sizing you up just as much as you're sizing them up. Oh, you didn't actually sound that way. I thought you looked completely different. Anyone notice with the whole COVID thing, the mask phenomenon, were you surprised by anyone's noses and mouths?
Yes.
You're like, I never would have pegged you for that nose, not in a million years. Like, there's nothing wrong with your nose. I just didn't think you looked like that, you know? So,
I honestly never gave it any thought, meeting people with masks on, you know.
Yeah?
Maybe I just don't care what they look like beyond, you know, neat and tidy.
Right. Well, good on you. Because I'm always wondering about their nose. I'm like, what do you got under there? I want to see it.
Are you looking for a ski slope or something?
That's like here at the hospital. I've had my mask on most of the time, and I took it off the other day, and they're like, oh, you look so different.
Yeah, for sure. I'd interacted with this one guy at my kid's gym and had no idea he had this thriving mustache underneath his mask. So when he took it off, I was like, whoa, that's awesome. So it resonates with you, Kay. That's good. So offering a handshake. I kind of think we're past the moment of not giving handshakes with the whole pandemic thing. If that's something that still bothers you, I think that you can give a handshake anyway and get hand sanitizer really quickly if you need to. Just make sure you're not touching your mouth or your nose. Make sure you don't break their hand, but not super gentle either, that you're offering appropriate eye contact. It's okay to look down or over every now and then. That's part of signaling normal turn taking for speaking. People tend to look away when they're done talking, but you don't need to stare into the depths of anyone's soul. Okay. So just appropriate eye contact, smile, make sure that you are constantly pleasant, even if you get in there and you know this is not the job for you. There's no way on earth you were going to work here. You need to make it through the interview like you want the job, because you don't know who that person knows. So maybe you don't want this job, but maybe this person knows someone else that is in your future that you might be interviewing with, or might have a job for you that you really do want to work with. You don't want to burn any bridges across employers. Make sense?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And then just, rounding out with poise, that dude we saw, like, he was all like laid back. He leaned all over the table. And that's just way too comfortable for a first meeting or an office setting anyway. So until you go through those stages of forming, norming, storming, and all of that in a group situation, you need to maintain a professional quality. Ladies and men, if you like to cross your legs, try to cross them just at your ankles, or have your feet firmly on the floor. It keeps from that leg bouncing or that ankle twitching that can be, distracting. Don't play with your hair. Just try to be relaxed and poised as much as possible. And that's why it's so good to get there early, just so you have a moment just to breathe and collect yourself. And again, keep smiling, being positive. So when you're in the interview, we talked about the show and tell. So your response is going to be because. I'm really glad you asked me why this position is interesting to me, because I was recently in a class where we talked about interpersonal communication, and it just really energized me as I learned about the ways that we interact with people. And I think I can take that and utilize it in your company to be the best human resources person for this position. See how I put that together? And then asking questions. Don't come to an interview without questions to ask. So some great canned questions you can ask are, how would you describe your company culture? What is it like to work here? And they're probably going to be thrown off like, oh, well, what is our company culture? So give them a moment to think about it. Ask them, I really liked how Cecilia mentioned conflict. How do you handle conflict here? What happens when people don't get along? What can I expect that to be like? Because the reality is conflict is going to happen one way or another. And so it's good to get a feel for how they do that. What are some other canned questions that you think you could ask of a potential employer?
Why is this position available?
Yeah, is the position available? Do you
No,
want to do
why
this?
is it available?
Oh, why is it available? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. What led you to needing this position? And then going back to it, the position's probably available, but where are you in your interview process? Like, are you just starting out and doing interviews? Are you kind of in the middle? How can I expect this to go? Which kind of leads to that next question, establishing next steps. But before we get there, you could also ask about their dress code. How do you prefer
Growth
for
rate.
people to, what? Dress code?
Growth rate.
Oh, what is your growth rate? Is your company climbing? Are you looking to scale? Are you opening any new adventures, any new offices? Where do you see this position going in the future? Is there any opportunity for growth? Yeah. You could ask procedural questions like, how do you handle snow days? Do you expect people to work in the office? Are the hours flexible? There's especially after COVID happened, there's just such a variance of what expectations are for 9 to 5. It's good to know all these things walking in. So then as the interview wraps up, make sure you're establishing next steps. When can I expect to hear from you? Where are you in your interview process? Is it okay if I contact you next week if I haven't heard from you by then? Just so that you are establishing, and remember, whether you want the job or not, that you are establishing moving forward in the interview position. Make sure when the interview is over that you send a thank you and you reiterate that you enjoyed the interview, that you are enthusiastic about the position. Also, make sure you're using active voice instead of passive voice. So passive voice is when it's not necessarily past tense, but it is when you are not the one who's doing the action. So you want to be the one, the subject, you're the subject, you're the one who is acting whatever it is. So I like to use, instead of saying I'm excited about the position, like that excitement is happening to me rather than me being the one who's excited. So I try to use present tense vocabulary. I usually land on enthusiastic, but you can look up any sort of synonyms. I'm looking forward. I'm sincerely enthusiastic, or, whatever. You can figure it out, whatever is most true to your personality, but make sure you're sending a thank you. You can send it. I think back in the old days, we would send cards, but it's a little slow now. So an email is probably the best method for sending that thank you. So that's in a nutshell, kind of a perspective on interviewing and interviewing skills. Now, as I am a communication instructor, if you find yourself in a position where you're getting ready to interview, just because our class is over doesn't mean that I'm going anywhere. So if you want to practice interviewing with me at any point, just reach out to me. We can grab a half hour somewhere and I can ask you some questions. Sound good?
Yeah.
Good.
All righty. So that's it. Thank you for coming, and I hope you all have a great day and happy Valentine's Day.
You too. Happy Valentine's Day to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll hang out for a few minutes if you want to talk about anything else. Otherwise, I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Oh, hi, Professor.
Hi.
I'm trying my best, as you know, but I'm working on the Learn It. I don't know if that's more important because you have an amount of time that you have to do the Learn It, and then they stop you, they freeze.
Right.
So it's like going and, I don't even go to which you have seen to Yellow Dig. And I have to work on my assignments. I don't
Okay.
know if I have the time. I hope. I don't know how am I doing though? I just started again with your
Well, as of right now, you're really close to passing. So you're at a 59.78%.
oh, thank God.
So I think you work on the learnings until they time you out, and then turn your
Mhm.
attention to the last assignments, assignment 4 and 5, and the reflection.
Okay.
The reflection is a pretty easy 40 points. And if you have someone to talk to for your assignment 5, at least half of those points are pretty easy to get because you're just recording their answers.
Okay.
So if you could, even if you can do, like, for the answers, do voice to text somehow so that you don't have to use sight, that'll be good.
Okay. I have my daughter. I can interview her.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. She works at it has to do anything with the job, or
Okay,
she works at Kettering Center, Sloan Kettering Center in Manhattan.
wonderful. I think that'll be
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
And especially if you guys can work in tandem, she could even do the typing for you if she's able to
Okay.
do that, so you don't have to, so you just don't have
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks
but I'll keep paying attention to your grade. And if for any reason it looks like you're not going to pass, I'll make sure that you know. But I think you're good. I think you're going to get it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all right, bye-bye.
Bye.